Can a state really operate above international law? This question sets the stage for our journey today. We're going to take a hard look at the actions of Israel since October 7th, 2023. This isn't an attempt to deny Israel's right to exist or defend itself. Instead, it's an exploration into its methods, a critical examination of its apparent disregard for legal norms. We'll be analyzing the events and decisions that have sparked controversy and debate on the world stage. We're going to dissect the claims, assess the arguments, and sift through the intricate web of political, military, and legal maneuvers. We're not here to be foolishly misled, but to state the facts, to challenge assumptions, and to provoke thought. So, fasten your seatbelts as we embark on this intricate journey of history retold, of narratives challenged, of voices unheard. Stay with us as we delve into this compelling and complex issue. So, what happened on October 7th? Let's take a closer look. On this fateful day, tensions that had been simmering in the region reached a boiling point. A series of unfortunate events led to an escalation in hostility between Israel and Palestine. The spark that ignited this powder keg was a disputed incident at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a holy site revered by both Jews and Muslims. This event, coupled with the ongoing issues of land disputes, illegal settlements, and political unrest, set off a chain reaction of violent confrontations and military actions. The events that unfolded on October 7th were not isolated incidents. They were the culmination of decades of unresolved issues, a testament to a conflict steeped in historical, religious, and political complexities. The day marked a significant escalation in the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, setting the stage for a series of actions that would draw international attention and scrutiny. In the days and weeks that followed, the world watched in dismay as the situation spiraled out of control. The international community was left grappling with questions about the legality and morality of Israel's actions. How had we reached this point? Were the actions taken by Israel in response to the October 7th events justified? And most importantly, were they in line with international law? This marked the beginning of a series of actions that have raised serious questions about Israel's accountability to international law. International law lays down critical guidelines for armed conflict, human rights, and the protection of civilians. It's the fabric of civility, dictating how nations should behave on the global stage. One such pillar of international law is the Geneva Conventions, a set of treaties that outline the fundamental rights of individuals during times of war. These conventions unequivocally stress the protection of civilians and the prohibition of collective punishment. Now let's examine actions taken by Israel since that fateful October 7th. One of the most criticized moves has been the blockading of Gaza, a collective punishment that has left nearly 2 million Palestinians in an open-air prison, cut off from the world. This blockade, in direct violation of the Geneva Conventions, has led to a humanitarian crisis, with shortages of basic necessities like food, water, and medicine. Then there's the use of force. International humanitarian law makes it clear, the use of force must be proportionate, and civilian life must be spared wherever possible. Yet the world has witnessed scenes of devastation, with civilian infrastructure reduced to rubble and countless innocent lives lost. And let's not forget about the settler violence, a disturbing trend where Israeli settlers in the West Bank inflict harm on Palestinians and their property, often with impunity. This act of aggression is not just morally reprehensible, but also a clear violation of international law. Lastly, there's the dehumanization of Palestinians, a subtle but powerful tool used to justify these actions. This dehumanization, whether through media portrayal or political rhetoric, strips Palestinians of their basic human rights and dignity, again in violation of international legal norms. These actions paint a picture of a state seemingly operating beyond the reach of international law. But why is this happening? And why does it continue unchecked? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the world of impunity and lack of accountability in our next scene. Despite these apparent violations, Israel faces little to no tangible consequences. This might make you scratch your head and wonder, why is that? Well, the answer lies in the power dynamics of the world stage. Western powers, particularly the United States, play a significant role in this scenario. They provide substantial military aid to Israel, bolstering its ability to carry out operations that are at odds with international law. This aid, running into billions of dollars annually, shields Israel from the economic repercussions that usually accompany violations of this magnitude. But it's not just about the money, it's also about politics. Israel, refusing to cooperate with investigations into its actions, often dismisses criticism as anti-Semitic or unfairly biased. This narrative is supported and propagated by influential pro-Israel lobby groups, like AIPAC, who have significant sway over Western governments and media outlets. These narratives are powerful. They contribute to a culture of impunity, where Israel's actions are either justified as self-defense or simply ignored. This results in a lack of accountability, where actions that would typically be condemned and punished are allowed to continue unabated. This isn't to say that attempts haven't been made to hold Israel accountable. The United Nations has repeatedly attempted to censure Israel for its actions. However, these attempts often hit a wall, thanks to the use of veto power by countries like the United States. The situation brings up an uncomfortable truth about international law. Its effectiveness and impartiality can be compromised by the political and economic interests of powerful nations. This not only undermines the principles that these laws were built upon, but also sets a dangerous precedent for other nations observing this situation. This lack of accountability raises important questions about the effectiveness and impartiality of international law. If a state can act with impunity, what does that say about the power of international law? And more importantly, what does it mean for the people who bear the brunt of these actions? It's a question that deserves our attention and consideration. The continued expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank is another glaring example of Israel's disregard for international law. This expansion, deemed illegal by numerous international bodies, is a clear violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits an occupying power from transferring its own civilian population into the territory it occupies. When we look at the international response to this, we see an alarming trend. Despite the International Court of Justice ruling in 2004 that the settlements were indeed illegal, the Israeli government has continued to expand them with little to no repercussions. This is where the striking comparison with other nations comes into play. Take, for instance, Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014. The international response was swift and decisive, with the United Nations General Assembly passing a resolution declaring the referendum leading to the annexation as invalid, and major powers, including the United States and the European Union, imposing sanctions on Russia. Another example is Iraq under Saddam Hussein. When Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, it faced a military response from a UN-authorized coalition and later, severe economic sanctions. These countries faced tangible consequences for their actions. They were held accountable. Yet, Israel, in its continued expansion of settlements, seems to operate without facing similar repercussions. It's a stark contrast that raises questions about the selectivity and effectiveness of international law enforcement. Even when international bodies have tried to investigate Israel's actions, their efforts have often been blocked. The International Criminal Court's attempt to probe alleged war crimes in the Palestinian territories is a case in point. Israel has refused to cooperate, citing bias. The contrast between Israel's impunity and the sanctions faced by other nations is stark and troubling. It forces us to question, can a state really operate above the law? And if so, what does this mean for the future of international law and justice? But what does this mean for the Palestinian civilians on the ground? It translates into an everyday reality of fear, uncertainty, and hardship. Imagine being a child in Gaza, where the sounds of laughter are often drowned out by the roar of fighter jets. Picture a mother in the West Bank, struggling to provide for her family amidst the economic constraints of the Israeli blockade. Envision a family in East Jerusalem, living under the constant threat of eviction to make way for Israeli settlers. These are not isolated incidents, but rather the daily struggles of Palestinians under Israeli occupation. Every civilian casualty, every destroyed home, every blocked access to vital resources is a story of a life disrupted, a dream shattered. These are the human faces behind the headlines, the people living with the consequences of a state operating above the law. So, what does the future hold for international law? It's time to ponder. When a state operates without consequences, it threatens the very fabric of global justice. It's not about picking sides, but about upholding the values we collectively cherish. If you're intrigued by the unconventional, eager to challenge historical norms, and ready to explore the charted, but with a different lens. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.